And thank you, Helicopter Investor, for having me. And also thank you for providing me with the title, The Rise of NHV. Last time I spoke about the rise of anything was in college when my professor asked me to do the Rise of the Roman Empire speech, which I thought that would be easy. It turned out to be a 6-volume book, so it took me a busy 14 days. So the last 6 months I've been preparing for this because of course we need to do something similar now. Nevertheless, 8 months ago I got a call to potentially join NHV again, and it was not a difficult decision. Right after my wife said yes, then I said yes, I would definitely like to join NHV again. And why is that? Good. There we go. Because of the ethos, because of the culture. This is my second time at NHV. I was part of senior management from 14 to 18, so I knew NHV well. Of course, a lot of stuff has happened since 18 to now, but nevertheless, the legacy, what we are as a company was something that I really could stand behind. From the innovative startup that Eric, a picture of him here, I'm fairly sure he would love that picture. There's an old one, 20 kilos ago, I think. Nevertheless, in 1997, Eric started the company with his brother, and then they slowly grew into, first of all, pilot services, and later on into the offshore oil and gas. And in 2014, they got investment behind them and bought Blue Wave Group and seriously got into the oil and gas business. We define ourselves by some of the things I've been writing up here, but nevertheless, that was part of the reason for me to wanting to join NHV, continue journey forward the coming years. So the last 6 months, we've been focusing on building our new strategy, a business plan to support it, of course, to see where we're going as a group, and I'll enlighten a bit here. Nevertheless, I would like to spend a couple of minutes describing who we are, what we are. One thing that defines NHV was taking risk, you can argue, or at least being a bit following the customers as much as we potentially could, being very close to the customer. Some key points or some cornerstones of the decisions made were, first of all, the launch of the, we were a launch customer on the 175, and proudly so, in 14 in Den Helder, and later on we grew throughout the North Sea as such. So that was definitely a bold decision made by management at the time to invest in 12 to 14 175s. That decision is paying off now. You can argue we are very much relying on the super medium, which turned out to be a very good decision for a strategic decision at the time. Also now, lately, last year we entered the oil and gas market with 169, also yet to test it out in this environment. And lately, now we moved the super mediums into the offshore wind, providing HSO services and crew services with 175 in Denmark, Germany, and in Poland. So again here, we try to be close to the customer and follow the customer and be a bit risk willing to follow the customer. Why are we this good? First of all, as I put in yellow here, we have had a culture of attracting young talent. Young is not age, it's experience in the community before they really have the experience. So we grew our own. Most of our senior managers now have started in the group and have, like me, maybe left and come back. But a lot of them have stayed on board for almost 20 years. So a lot of our management started in NHV, has grown up. So we like that family feeling, and we like growing new talents up, and we like those eager, young, hungry people in our community, because they push the rest of us towards being as close to the customer, and towards also being a bit risk willing with regards to where we go in the market. We have focused on being close to the customer since day one. It's not, I won't hide it that we have lost that a bit over the last maybe 6 years, but we are now revisiting the ability to be very close to the customer. For reasons, in particular, the Brexit has changed the culture a bit, and we're now reversing it back to a real true, what we call yellow culture, so that is ongoing. Throughout, we had a modern fleet strategy, so our average fleet age is below 8 years right now, and it will be even lower shortly. So we are configured with a fairly young fleet as such, and we're quite proud of that, which we believe is also, from a future perspective, quite important for us. A few words on the two main business lines we're in. First of all, oil and gas, which is 50% plus of our turnover. We're very exposed here in the UK, so that's our primary market, so primarily North Sea and also a bit in West Africa. I think there's nothing new on the slide here. Oil prices, of course, impacting directly on what we do. And in the UK in particular, the last year, we saw a slowing of operations, which again affected us as a subcontractor to the oil and gas while waiting for the UK government to sort of get its own feet around, and also the industry to get a feet around where they're going. But now for looking in our order book, it will pick up the next half year and then come back to a normal or even above normal is what we're expecting. So from that perspective, politically, we've been very influenced. There's some elephants in the room always when it comes to the offshore oil and gas. One thing that we always struggled with was, of course, contract length versus the investment that we need to do or the leasing that we need to set up. There's often a mismatch with those, as leasing companies or investments are longer term than the normal contracts. However, over the last couple of years, we've seen an increase in the average length of the oil and gas commitments contracts that we sign. So we see up to 7 years now with a possibility of extension. It used to be the norm was probably 3, 4, 5 years with extension. So that is a very good movement from an operator perspective, which makes it easier for us to maneuver the market and also attract financing, of course. Even though financing in oil and gas has been a bit difficult because most of financiers have, of course, been diversification out of the oil and gas and looking at the greener energy, and that has been a problem, of course, for us. In particular, when you look at our fleet, which is a fleet as such, so we don't allocate, normally don't allocate a particular MSN number to a contract. So it's very difficult for us, since we work in several markets, to ensure that this particular airframe is not exposed to oil and gas, for example, if that's a requirement from the customer. So these are some of the dynamics that I would like to throw out in this audience that definitely should be discussed. And also in the geopolitical situation where oil and gas, we will depend on oil and gas in as we know, probably longer than we expected some years ago. Maybe there's a discussion to be had in that environment. Offshore wind, we see a maturing market. Generally speaking, it was very much 10 years ago depending on legislation as an entry bar, but we now see that the industry is pushing industry requirements, which again, from our perspective as a high-end operator, makes the entry bar higher, which makes it more interesting for us. 10 years ago, every person with a helicopter could more or less start flying offshore wind, and it's not like that anymore. So we very much applaud the industry moving towards higher standards, which are getting closer to the oil and gas standards, which have matured for 40 years or so, 50 years. So from that perspective, we applaud the wind industry's movement towards higher standards, which makes it also with the standards that we come requires overhead, which again makes the business case for us better as such. Typically, we saw smaller assets, 145, as you see here in the picture, or 169 being sort of the maximum or the largest helicopters on. But nowadays we see others, and we are quite proud here to have launched the 175 in HSO operation for a customer, and we expect to grow in that market. So the setup that we are now doing with the super mediums are different from what we've seen in the wind industry before, where it was very much one base, one helicopter servicing an area. Now it's a mobile base where we change bases in our particular operation. We have 3 bases where the helicopter will move between as the customer requires, and we can do, since we have a larger platform, we can both do crew services and we can also do HHO. And the HHO part, of course, this was our first using super medium, so it was quite critical that we could service the wind turbines with the super medium, and it turned out to be a non-event. So as such, both we and the customer are quite pleased with how the super medium performed, the 175 in this case, performs. Many of the contracts we've seen historically has been no volume, no guarantee contracts, and that has been, as such, very risky for us to move. But again, here the industry has matured, and we see not volume, but at least monthly standing fees being involved in how we go operate. So from that perspective, we expect margins for all in the industry to increase over time as the industry matures, and it will be more lucrative for more to be in the area. This is a major business line for us, of course, in the coming years, so we are very much looking forward to developing that part of the group. So what's next for us? Well, this year, not only because I joined, but it's a consolidation year. It's a between year for us. We are reorganizing our strategy. We're reorganizing our business plan, as I said before. But looking at our cost base, it's quite important for us to be sharp. So we restructure the entire group most likely soon, and we will look at our cost base, supporting services. How much do we need? Are we sharp enough? This is also to allow us to be sharper in the wind market, where we still see lower margins than the oil and gas, and the requirements also are a bit more relaxed. So we don't, for example, often need flight data monitoring, similar things, which then allows us not to bring that overhead into that market. It's important for me to bring ownership. It's a given, all companies want this. However, this is why I want to say that because of Brexit, we had to set up an AOC in the UK in order to support our customer base here in the UK. And having rapidly to set up an AOC gave us a big influx of new people, which then the culture was difficult to build, and also many of the specialists we had to pull in order to be nominated persons in the AOC and other services in the AOC, of course, came from other companies. So we're still working on building the culture back to where we were with local ownership. And many of them come with a very corporate mindset, which is also good, but also bad. It's difficult to be really close to the customer if you have a too corporate mindset. The long screwdriver approach is never good. So we want to be very close to the customer, i.e., the base manager as such is the pivotal manager in our setup, where the base manager is close to the customer, owns all asset, in principle has a P&L, and as such is measured. That requires, of course, middle management that is very adult and are used to working in a P&L environment. But we nevertheless believe that that's the best way for our setup with the size we have right now. Customer-centric, same thing. It's important for us to be very, very focused on the customer and follow the customer requirements. I just told you about the 175. That is a customer requirement we're following here. The same with using SAF on the offshore wind on the 175. Again, a customer requirement. We're very happy to comply here because I think it's the whole industry will move there slowly. So as it becomes more readily available, and also the OEM certify higher percentage of SAF, I think it will be the norm for most of us at that point. So 2026 forward, we expect growth, particularly the wind segment, and also governmental services. Some call it diversification. Bristol said balance. I think it's more or less the same. But governmental service is quite important to us. We are already in the market, and we're slowly growing also. We're establishing next contracts, hopefully in Belgium soon, to support. And then MRO services is quite important for us also. That is a bit further out in the horizon, though. Also, in 26-27, we hope to re-enter some markets, pending on tenders, of course, as it is in the market, but again, growing as a group. So we would only not build on the current footprint, but also go towards expanding the footprint, primarily Europe and West Africa, where we are comfortable, so to speak. With that, I'm done. I think in time.
Thank you very much. Can we have some questions, please? Has anyone got a question for the CEO? While we're thinking about it, unless we have one pop up, I'd like to ask Lars-Henrik. We had a conversation 6 months ago in January, and you were talking about diversifying revenue streams. You mentioned MRO, you mentioned pilot and technician training. What's the most promising of those diversified streams for you?
Well, neither of those two is. MRO is a long-term strategy for us. MRO for government services is shorter term, so that will be the most obvious, and that's the one that we expect to pay off even within a year.
Yeah. And you mentioned re-entering markets. Could you just say a little more about which markets, in which geographies?
Yes, West Africa is definitely on our radar as such, and then also market segments. We are looking actively at HEMS or MRO for HEMS, so these are markets that we would like to re-enter again.
Here we've got a question. Do you find competition on offshore wind tenders to be high or low currently? You mentioned low margins, I noticed in your presentation.
Yeah, a very good question. We often end up, if we are in the final phases of tender negotiations, that we are at least 3, so that's often a bit more. How many contenders there are, it's difficult for me to say. Depending on, there are some tenders which, from a volume perspective, is too risky for us, so I don't know if there's a lot of contenders on those tenders. We see generally that there are quite a few actors, especially smaller ones that are quite active, that are primary contenders.
Have you seen competition intensifying over time? Or is it?
No, I think the opposite. I think as the industry matures and the entry bar is raised, then what we've seen is we know competitors we didn't really a few years ago, because there was a number of almost unknowns. So from that perspective, we see known contenders.
So it's focusing in the hands of established players then?
Yeah.
As the market matures?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Here's a dangerous question. Didn't know there were accountants in the room. Well, I did. If you were to cut one business, which is it?
Well, we have a Part 147 as such, and we were thinking to go very much aggressively external on Part 147 training, so engineer training. For now, we decided not to. So if anything, I would cut that one because it's not making much revenue, so that would be easy for me.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, that was an easy answer to an apparently difficult question. So, Lars-Henrik Thorngreen, CEO, NHV, thank you so much. Thank you.